Welcome back to another video from Learn Electrics. Today we will look at Part P of the building regulations. What is it and what must I do as an electrician to comply with it? Before we get into Part P, we need to look very briefly at the history of the document. Originally there was only one Part P that covered both England and Wales. Scotland and Northern Ireland do not operate a Part P scheme, but they do have rules and procedures that are very similar in effect. In 2013 there was a request to make changes to the Part P scheme, but this was rejected by the Welsh decision makers, and as a result Wales kept Part P unchanged and still worked to the same standards as it was in 2006. If you have a Part P document that says for England and Wales on the front page, this now applies only to Wales. The English, however, adopted the changes, and since 2013 the English Part P document states on the front cover for use in England. The English 2013 version reduced the number of work types that required notification, a reduction in the paperwork and procedures required. So, what is Part P? Let's start by looking at its proper name. It is called Approved Document P and is part of a group of 14 or so approved documents relating to the building regulations. Part P gives guidance on how to comply with the building regulations for electrical work. But other approved documents may also apply to electrical work, for example smoke detectors, kitchen fans and so on. Complying with the building regulations is a requirement and must be done, but approved document P is only advisory. It will offer solutions on how to comply with the building regulations, but you do not have to follow them if you have another means of complying with no less regard to the safety of persons, livestock and the risk of fire. Me, personally, I just followed what it said in Part P and I would know automatically that I was complying. It would help your understanding of Part P enormously if you had your own copy. Download your own free copy after watching this video by visiting www.planningportal.gov.uk. You will find all the approved documents available as a free PDF download. My suggestion is that you download them all and keep them on your computer as PDFs. And then print out Part P, Welsh or English as appropriate, around 20 pages, a few more in the Welsh version. Do not print the rest of the approved documents until you actually need them or need certain pages from them. There is something like 1,000 pages altogether. If we look at the building regulations, we find that any building work must comply with the building regulations. And building work includes erecting or extending a building, providing or extending controlled services, and this will include the installing or extension of electrical services, and when altering or extending a controlled service or fitting. Electrical circuits are classed as controlled services within the building regulations. The building regulations require that when the work is complete, a new building must comply in all respects with the building regulations in force at the time. For an existing building, it is only the actual work that is done that must comply with the latest version of the building regulations, and any other parts of the building or installation that may be affected by your work. Also, when undertaking work in an existing building, there may be energy efficiency requirements that need to be taken into account for your work, for that part of the building where you are working, or even for the whole building. It is your responsibility to comply with the relevant building regulations. We are, after all, going there to make the building or the installation better, not worse. We mentioned other approved documents a moment ago, and these may also affect your work. A full list of these and the areas that they affect is shown at the end of approved document Part P. An example might be Part B for fire safety. There may be a need for you to provide smoke and fire detection equipment in certain parts of certain buildings. You may need to consider the resealing of holes and penetrations for cables that pass through walls, floors and ceilings so that smoke and flames cannot spread through them. And houses of multiple occupancy, or HMOs, are given special consideration in Part B, and if working in a building with several apartments or flats, then you will need to take these into consideration too. Looking at document P now, there is a very important requirement that is shown. This is requirement P1, and it forms the basis for Part P. It states that reasonable provision shall be made in the design and installation of electrical installations in order to protect persons that are operating, maintaining or altering the installation from injury or the effects of fire. It also states it's applicable only in low voltage or extra low voltage installations that are in a dwelling or attached to a dwelling, in common parts of flats and buildings with more than one dwelling, in a building that receives its electricity from within a dwelling or sharing a dwelling's meter, in gardens or land using electricity from a dwelling. This is how we interpret Part P at Learn Electrics. We're dealing with domestic installations, and extra low voltage lighting might be installed. This will often be 12 volts, but the range goes up to 50 volts AC. Above 50 volts AC, and we are in the low voltage range, which will include everything else in a dwelling: the sockets, cooker, ordinary lighting, shower, etc. As we are dealing with single phase with a line, neutral and earth, the maximum for this range is 600 volts AC. Part P tells us that everything that derives its electrical supply from the meter in this house is affected by Part P. This does not mean that everything must be notified, but we must consider what is and isn't notifiable. Any outbuildings, garages or greenhouses that take their supply through the house meter will come under Part P rules, as will any garden electrics to the garden pond, swimming pools, jacuzzis, barbecue areas or outdoor lighting that also uses the house meter. Another example might be installing new electric gates. If the supply to the gate isolator switch was installed before the current work, that is to say it was pre-existing and possibly notified at an earlier time, then the connecting of the new gates is not notifiable. However, if the works include installing the gates and a new supply to the gate isolator, then this will need to be notified. A new supply from the house meter to a horse stable in an adjoining field would likewise require notifying. If a dwelling and a business share a building, then the meter becomes very important. For instance, if the business owner lived above his shop and used the same common meter for both the shop part and the dwelling part, then work in any part of the building would become Part P applicable and might be notifiable. Another business might have its own meter, and the flat above also has its own meter. Now, because the meters are separate, Part P only applies to the dwelling part. A block of flats, residential care home or similar might have dwellings and businesses in the same building. Part P will apply to all the dwellings and to any shared areas that are used by the occupants of the dwellings. For example, this might include laundry facilities, a communal TV lounge or a games room, all come under Part P, as do the stairways, corridors and hallways that the residents use. However, the lift that the residents use is not Part P applicable. It will have its own set of rules and regulations. Any businesses in the block of flats that have their own meter will also not be Part P applicable. But a private lift in a private house or dwelling will come under the Part P rules and should be treated as any other circuit in a dwelling. We have looked at what types of buildings and circuits might be notifiable under Part P. So let's answer the question of what is notifiable work in a dwelling or attached to a dwelling. Installing a new circuit is notifiable. It will include a new circuit breaker, new cables and new accessories in any part of the dwelling. New installation work in outdoor settings, new garden pond wiring for example, new circuits to isolators for outdoor lights, gates and garage doors. Replacing a consumer unit in the dwelling is also notifiable work. And additions or alterations to circuits in special locations such as bathrooms, shower rooms, swimming pools, saunas and outdoor installations and isolators. In Wales, Part P also applies to kitchens. So, what is non-notifiable work? Approved Document P states, if the work is not listed in the building regulations as notifiable, then it is non-notifiable work. Additions or alterations to existing installations that are not in special locations, repairs, replacements and maintenance anywhere. So extending a pre-existing circuit in a lounge is not listed as notifiable and therefore it is non-notifiable. Installing fixed equipment is within the scope of Part P, but it is not notifiable if the circuit that it is attached to already exists. For example, installing a built-in cooker to an already existing cooker circuit, or carrying out installation work inside a garage where the circuit supplying the garage is already installed. Another instance, installing factory-made prefabricated wiring and lighting systems linked by plug and socket connectors if the circuit they connect to already exists. All work should be electrically inspected and tested, and one of the following certificates issued when the circuit is correctly installed and all work and all remedial actions are finished. And these are a minor work certificate or an electrical installation certificate. The local authority can and do take enforcement action against work that is unsafe and non-compliant with the regulations, both notifiable work and non-notifiable work. Notifiable work should be certified, that is to say notified, by one of the following methods: self-certification by a registered competent person, third-party certification by a registered third-party certifier, or certification by a local authority building control body, shortened to LABC. Another question we are asked at Learn Electrics is, what are Part P training courses? Part P training courses, or domestic electrical installer courses as they are called, are not just about approved Document P. They are intended to build your awareness and to give you some understanding of the building regulations, the relevant approved documents, understanding the parts of an electrical installation, an appreciation of earthing and bonding, learn about special locations, an introduction to circuit design and how to select cable sizes and breaker sizes. lighting circuit basics, an overview of three-phase supplies, and inspection and testing of electrical installations. An important consideration is that if you are new to the trade, then attending a Part P domestic electrical installer course will certainly benefit you and give you a lot of knowledge, but it will not make you a fully qualified electrician overnight. It will give you the basic knowledge and skills required of electricians as you begin your career as an electrician, and it will allow you to register as an approved electrician as your skills and knowledge are added to. This takes time, but it is without doubt an excellent trade to be in. Time, experience and learning are the key things. And finally, what about registering as a competent person? It is usually to your advantage financially and in time saving to register with one of the schemes as a registered competent person so that you can self-certify your own work. Learn Electrics have produced a YouTube video about this, and the video title is Joining Part P Competent Person Schemes. Thank you for watching this video from Learn Electrics. If you enjoyed it, please click the like button below. If you click on subscribe below, you will have access to all of the videos and you will not miss our next weekly Tech Tips video. Typing in Learn Electrics into the YouTube search bar will bring up a list of our videos. Clicking the like and subscribe buttons really does help us. And finally, we look forward to seeing you again very soon.